Yeah, this was the children, and I guess we'll just kick it off with a simple question. Who are the children? What are the children? What do you guys think about that? I don't know.
Well, who do you think the children are?
He's good.
I'd like to hear from the audience before I weigh in.
All of the children, the future. Why we sacrifice for today in order for something good to happen for our either physical or legacy children.
Anyone else? Thoughts? It was one of the first questions that we actually tackled early in the rehearsal process. And I think that Lucy Kirkwood, I think that she means for the title of the children to reflect a lot of things. That is the children of Hazel and Robin, the grandchildren of their children. The children, I think, is the word that she uses for the workers, the young workers, you know, at the reactor. Obviously, the children of the future. Perhaps they are the children. One of the first things Robin does, as you know, is he rides the tricycle, you know, and maybe we are the children, you know, that we're behaving like children in regards to our response to the climate emergencies, you know, that are going on, including fallout from, you know, nuclear power plant disasters. So I think she means for the term to encompass all of that.
Very nice.
Nice.
Well, we also talk about playing, come play, she says, come play with me.
Right.
Right.
So you get that sort of, I mean, you know, they have such a heavy load that they're carrying, and their lives are so burdened that level.
You know, I think as parents, we would all lay our lives down for our children, our grandchildren. I think most people would do that.
No.
And so that's what they can do.
Is it
What do you
really a
guys
play
think?
about climate change? You know, that the older generation should sacrifice itself or a lot of its pleasures and luxuries for climate change?
I think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
I think that when she says to Robin, well, learning to live with less,
Yeah.
that, I think we all need to do that. Yeah. So yes, I agree. And I don't know if I would lay down my life.
The material within the play on Fukushima, because that would have been more contemporary to her than Chernobyl was. And early in the process, we did a lot of research into both Fukushima and Chernobyl. They also did a lot of research into what it means to be a nuclear engineer. You know, fusion and fission and, you know, and all of that.
I am
So-
now going to start building a nuclear plant.
Never uses the term climate change, you know, but what she wanted to write was a climate change play. And in the process of working on that, you know, she landed on the issue of Fukushima and on in England, on the East Coast where this takes place, in Suffolk County, is a nuclear power plant, Stillwell. There's actually several of them there. Stillwell A and B. Now they're building C, but what she wanted to deal with was this whole issue, the larger issue of climate emergencies, you know, and how those emergencies can come from a variety of different sources, obviously, you know, whether it's nuclear waste, whether it's coal waste, whether you know, is what the chemical companies are putting into, you know, our food chain and our land and our water and all that. The question is, what do you do with all the waste, you know? And, you know, because as we know, you know, the half-life, you know, of radiation is, you know, tens of thousands of years. And so it's a really fascinating problem. And at the same time, how do we then generate electricity? You know?
But there's also the bad press that nuclear energy and nuclear reactors get because of those few disasters. But the benefits of nuclear energy is also a very good argument can be made for it. And there's a lot of, from what I've been researching, there's a lot of understanding now, unlike when we built the nuclear plants, because we were young and it was in the 70s and, you know, it was still developing. But we depend on nuclear energy for radiation, for cancer, for, I heard something on the news the other day, I'm just trying to remember what it was, but it was that there is a new use in medicine for nuclear energy, which they're really developing. So what do? And we all know that coal needs to go away. And so what are we going to replace it with? And when she says, what is your line when you say?
No good getting silly about nuclear because what's the alternative?
Yeah, what's the alternative?
I don't know that I agree, but the character sees that.
When I was back in England, right around the time we started rehearsals on Zoom. I was back in England for a scheduled trip the first time after lockdown, and I happened to be flicking through the channels one night, and there was a panel discussion about nuclear power, and the traditional people that I would have thought were against nuclear power, the Greens, were all on this panel discussion, were all for nuclear power, just because of global warming. It kind of spun my head around. I'm not used to that political faction being on that end of the argument. And it was very vocal in England. It was also the fact that the panel discussion, they sort of took that for granted that the Green Party was actually for nuclear power development in Britain, which was very odd. So it's been a bit of a change. I think there's perception of the ability to control atomic power more than it was.
A lot of
in the
climate
60s and
scientists are in
70s.
favor of nuclear.
Can you say that
Yeah,
again? I
well,
couldn't hear you.
A lot of climate scientists are in favor of nuclear.
Right.
Yeah.
And wave power.
Yeah.
I've been reading about that too. I mean, that is a really, she comes up with that, it's like, of course you would. You know, because you're so smart. And wave power is right now grappling with the ungovernable fusion. Because fusion is just not, they still haven't figured out how to harness that and control it, but they are looking very closely into wave power right now, which I think is, you know, brilliant. People are so smart. Yes, well, you make mistakes. And we all, unfortunately.
Can we talk about your process as actors? And for instance, from time you receive script to being on the stage, what is your process? How do you get through the character, the role?
Oh, me. You go first.
Well, you go first. Because I have the least line load in this thing, and we seem to have a lot of rehearsal time for this. I mean, we had a month. What was it, a month?
4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah.
I really
That's a
thought,
lot.
I really thought it needed 6.
That doesn't sound like
Well, the Berliner Ensemble will do it for like 6 months before they unveil something and it's ready to go. But it sort of forced us, forced us. So whenever we have, up until this weekend, we had a speed through before every show, where we just jam the lines before we even, like for an hour and a half before we went on. But I don't know, everyone has their own process really. You sort of figure out what the play's about, and you figure out sort of what the character's about, and then I'm so far away, it's been so long since I discussed this whole thing. I mean, you're smart.
Well, no, I'm
She's smart.
but,
She's got a big
but I think I was rehearsing 2 things at once the first 2 weeks, so I got behind, I felt, and that was so. But it's a brilliantly written play, but it's unlike a lot of other plays in that usually 2 or 3 things are always happening at once, and so some of the, I don't know if you agree with this, you guys, Simon, but some of the structure of the play is a little unlike most playwriting because it's so layered, and she'll take a turn so that you'll be pursuing one thing and then it'll go a direction you don't expect it to, which I think is why it's compelling, you know. but it's a little unusual, and one of the things I think Simon did that I really liked was he let a lot of things be happening at once and didn't get niggly about certain things having to happen at certain moments. I'm not talking about physical action now, I'm talking about more like objectives and what the character is pursuing. So that it was allowed to stay as complex as it could be, and I think because it's so well written, as we get deeper in, this is our third weekend, we're finding more, we're still discovering, and that makes it really exciting. And working with these two is really a treat, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like you always, as an audience member, when I'm an audience member, I always tend to watch the relationship between two people, the distance between people, rather than watch the individual. Because it's all about the tiny things are affecting us back and forth. And they have it much harder than I do, because I have this one objective when I come back is to show her the tricycle that I've rescued from them. And after that, I just become a pinball with all these things happening to me that I have to react. These guys, I mean, Rose has got a major objective to try and get these people, that's why she's here, to try and get them in. And then, and Hazel's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with these people. I'm just like, I want to drink, I want to get kissed, all this, it's very simple, my stuff, compared to their stuff. They had a much more interesting journey in this. So the more interesting they get, the more interesting I can get, because I'm just playing off the interesting stuff they're doing. So.
A lot of it is allowing for a layering process to happen during the rehearsal process, so that that there's 4 or 5 things going on in any given moment in the play, and it's not a question of being right or wrong about which of those happens to come forward, in a particular line or a particular beat in the play, and there are moments, of course, where the objective is very clear, and what the character wants, what the character is trying to make happen is very clear, and that needs to be specific, but it doesn't have to be specific in every moment, so it becomes, because otherwise it becomes robotic. You know what I mean? And so the part of the joy and the challenge of directing is to be able to create a playground that is specific enough for them to be able to play in, but still be free enough to be able to have the emotional life, of whatever it is that they're dealing with in that particular moment, and hopefully that grows and it deepens the more that they're doing the play, And then there's the dance with the audience as well, where the audience reacts, if they laugh, how do you hold for that, how do you allow that to happen? So it's a wonderful process, really.
Not to grade an audience, but I found a lot of humor, and sometimes found myself kind of alone with a little laugh. And my question is, as you've played this to other audiences, I mean, matinee's a different creature often, did you find more reaction to some of the humor and irony?
Absolutely. But I think this play is, you have to have laser focus, or at least I do. And whatever the audience feels doesn't affect me. Because what I care about is what I need and what I want from these two people. And I think that if they're not laughing, that's okay, they're still listening, and I don't think about it. I don't want to think about it, actually, because then that takes me outside of myself. So I think, for at least for my character, she's got it. God, it's a minefield, and navigating through that minefield changes all the time, depending on what she does and what he does.
But to answer your question directly, it varies wildly.
Yeah.
School back in the ancient late 80s, and during the course of the acting thing, one of the acting teachers said, look, all it is, it's a succession of moments, and if you can convince the audience they're going to hear the opposite of what happens next, then you've got them, because everyone's surprised at each moment. So all your intention is, all your body language is trying to hypnotize the audience in the next moment to thinking they're going to get the opposite of what they actually get. And this play is fantastic at that.
Yes.
There's so many edges to those jigsaw pieces. It's like a 3D jigsaw. It's crazy. That's my
Very well
comment.
said, thank you.
There was a tremendous amount of time spent on the infidelity and the affairs, and you get the impression that these two people are really not high moral characters. You know.
Me, my character and his?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the question I have is,
Can I just say that I never once considered that?
Me neither.
That's how deep I was in
Me
that.
neither.
I'm talking about more about the variety of it. And I'm inferring that the writer is trying to set the stage for showing that people who ordinarily you would have a very low opinion of their moral standards, stepping up and doing the right thing. Or was it just to add a little spice?
No, I agree with you. I think she's putting in all our laps the question. You know, we seem to be on a precipice, humanity, and we're all going to be forced at some point to be making hard decisions. And I think the more imperfect these people are, the more identification you can have. You must be a very high moral character. You wouldn't have felt that way. but I think that it was by design, so that it foists it into the audience's lap. You know, in the way to be having that conversation with yourselves and each other.
Because
And
it's
this.
all very complex. Everything is complicated.
Yeah.
Relationships are complicated. The
Yeah.
future's complicated. Our relationship with the planet is complicated. And we can just go, well, it's complicated, but then that can't be a reason to not make decisions, or to not take a stand. Or something.
And I think
Take a stand.
from the first second of the play, there are obstacles thrown in the way for me to get what I want. She clocks me. That's the first bad thing that happens in the play. And then it's a constant series of obstacles that divert me, my mission. And it takes a long time to get to that because there's emotions involved and there's friendships involved and there's betrayals. But there's just so many things that you have to navigate around.
And who's the bad guy here?
Yeah.
I mean, who's the bad guy? If she hadn't got knocked up on purpose, then it's possible that we would have been together and happy. She could have gone off with Douglas Klein. You know, everyone would have happily ever after.
Douglas wouldn't
That's a different play.
It was imperative to me, two things were really imperative to me. One, that these be real, believable characters on stage, real, believable people on stage. And two, that we, the audience, can identify with aspects of each of them. And that if we're sort of bouncing around during the play, identifying, saying yes to this or no to that, to me, that's the joy of being in theater, you know, because then it becomes an active participation, you know, for the audience. So I love it that you have, you know, a reaction, either a moral or an ethical reaction to aspects of each of the characters.
But if the journey is redemption, you can't start out as a saint. If the journey is what we have done wrong, and you're going for the healing, you're going.
I was just gonna say, actually sort of two parts. One is, you were all brilliant. I mean, the reviews do not lie. You are all so superb, and you do not miss a beat. I mean, the fact that you can move and make a salad and do tea and the water and thing and the milk and get to the phone and go get the wine and I mean, I was like, I don't even think I moved that much in my own life when I'm by myself, let alone with a whole company of people and a whole audience watching. It's really brilliant, and thank you so much. The other thing is, I know people who have seen this play, and it's very interesting because there seems to be a lot of conversation about what is it really about? Is it about the relationships of these three people? Is it about the larger question of what's going on with the nuclear plant and the moral obligation or not moral obligation, but there's so, as you said, it's so multi-layered. What do you guys think, having worked on it and chewing on it and delving into it and all that? What do you feel? I think, my personal opinion as an audience member, having seen it for the first time now, is that it's about both. I think it's very hard to separate.
Yeah.
Because they're humans, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, in the long run, they may be nuclear scientists, like she says, people think we're a breed, don't they? And often scientists are kind of accused of being kind of clinical and brainiacs, but whereas they're emotional truth, but in fact they're human beings who have children, who have families, and who put their lives on the line to work in these nuclear plants. And so I think that the human element as well as the scientific element is very beautifully balanced.
Because
Well,
to make the kind of decision you have to make, I think she had to structure it so about sacrificing your life to help close the nuclear, contain the disaster. You have to understand all the things that go into a decision like that, and which ultimately are personal. So I think they're interdependent, the two sides that you talk.
And the question I had is, aside from your being a child and getting a kick out of the scooter, I know what your, at least, well, let me just ask it in general. What was the purpose and the meaning of each of your characters at the beginning of the play?
And then I'm just presented with a whole other world. And, I'm trying to save my skin a lot of the time, trying to figure out what's going on, who knows what, when, who spilled the beans,
Right.
what
But
I need to cop to.
You knew you were dying.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's dying, right? I mean,
But you were
this
sick.
could be coughing up blood. Some people do that. It doesn't mean you have 6 months to live. It doesn't mean you have at some point there's a time frame on things. But I'm just going to keep doing the same things I'm doing until I go. I haven't even considered going back to the power plant. And again, talking about that as being, the children being selfish. Am I being a selfish child to go ahead and be noble like this and leave Lauren all by herself to grieve? Is that a selfish thing? Everything can be seen as selfish. Everything can be seen as childish. And I think those motivations, what do I want from things changes. It changed continually during the course of this play. So,
Thanks.
but Lily's the one to ask. She's good.
I'm not sure I know.
I think she's a kid. So there are issues that
There-
are
yeah.
huge, and people who have
She's the problem
children
child.
that are problems. It takes its toll. It takes its toll on relationships. It takes its toll on the child. And what do you do?
Yes,
You know?
but I do think that it's more complicated than that even, which is I
Yes.
think that there's guilt. I mean, she really pulls at guilt and responsibility thematically throughout the play. And I think
trust her.
manipulating him, if what Rose says is true and that I got knocked up on purpose, so manipulating him to keep him when I may not have wanted a child. I may have just wanted him. I mean, it started things off in the amniotic sac that was, full of a lot of weird emotions. And then she's saying that she wished Lauren dead. Well, I mean, I don't know if Lucy Kirkwood is saying children are in vitro or that sensitive, but
He also
it's
refers to her as the
plausible.
vampire, so she's
Yeah.
become the undead.
I think there's a lot more to wrong, I think at least as an audience member, I see your intention changing throughout as you are trying to sort of navigate what, you're sort of protecting Rose, you're not revealing what she shared with you about her cancer, and Lily's really going at her. You know, you can see that you're being protective of her without revealing her or betraying her confidence if she's not ready to tell Lily. And still protecting Lily as well. I mean, you have a delicate.
Yeah, I feel like a bit of a fire engine sometimes. I'm sort of spraying this down and then
Yep.
spraying it, but ultimately I'm just trying to protect myself. You know?
It's also one of the miracles of Lucy Kirkwood's writing. You know, most playwrights, you know, they give their characters maybe one secret or two secrets.
Oh.
And here she gives all three of these characters multiple secrets. I mean, it's really a remarkable achievement in playwriting, I think, you know. All compacted in this, you know, hour and 40 minutes is extraordinary.
It reveals one surprise after another.
Exactly, and it's always constantly another layer, another secret is revealed, another.
And some are
I
not
mean, when
revealed.
you pull the makeup off, it's like,
Yeah, it's a big moment.
Yeah, and some are not revealed. That whole thing about she knew where the glasses were. The whole time I'm thinking, so did they fool around in the house? Where was Hazel? How does she know where the glasses
No,
are? Did they mean?
Well, so a couple of us think this is her house, it's actually.
She bought the house.
It's at MIT, right? It's at
MIT, that's what I think, yeah. I mean, going back to your original question about the process, I have a process that I do for every play that I either direct or I act. And when I'm acting, I write an extensive bio for my character, starting with I was born. And I do a shit ton of research about that, so that I have a 360-degree understanding of who she is, what she did. And I find that, to me, to be as thorough as possible. But in a play like this, you can't just waltz into this, you know, and hope for the best. You know, you've just got to really deeply attack it. And I think I can honestly say I really don't know night after night after night what's going to happen.
Well,
I try not to think of anything but the first moment. And her. I think about her because she's waiting for me, and knowing that she's coming on.
And the
it's
reason,
like,
the reason,
I've got her, you know, she's got my back.
the reason the three of these actors are so brilliant is because they listen. They really listen. And it's the hardest thing to do as an actor, I think, on stage, is to really hear.
Dramatic, and then you extrapolate that back into your character, so that your character does exactly what is the most dramatic in that situation. So it's sort of text-based.
That's what I rewrite.
Yeah,
Because
that's-
I have found things out that I now think, oh,
Thank you so much.
change.
Let's give him a huge hand one more time.